Well, I'm so excited about our next guest. The French Open is here, by the way. But Patrick McEnroe is not only a friend, but the best commentator on tennis on network television. And listen, I don't play as much as I used to, but I still love the game. And he teaches me things still, which is kind of to me, that's what makes a really great commentator. But anyway, enough of that. It's great to see him. We worked together a couple of years ago for a news network. Hope to work with him again. Pat, thank you for taking the time. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Love working with you too. And I won't tell my brother what you just said that I'm the best tennis commentator, but we work together a lot at ESPN and looking forward to head over to the French Open, which I'm doing in a couple of days. I'm going to be there. Unfortunately, not doing any TV because ESPN doesn't have the rights. It's a tennis channel during the week, and NBC covers the finals. My brother will be there working for NBC, but going over there for a few other work duties, so looking forward to it. And it's actually interesting this year, Doug. It's almost more like a golf tournament than a tennis tournament going in because there's so many guys, I think, that can actually win it. And, for the last 15 years, of course, at the French Open especially, it's been basically about Rafael Nadal.
Right.
Djokovic has snuck in there a couple of times, to win three times there. But now with both those guys coming in with probably the biggest question marks they've had, certainly the two of them, and then the two top young guys, Sinner and Alcaraz, both have been battling injuries. Pretty wide open, still not as much as in a golf major. Where I guess with Scheffler now lately, he's been so good, but it's almost like there's 20, 30 guys, maybe more, that could win it. Not that many in tennis, but definitely I would say maybe more than I could count on one hand have a chance of winning it. On the women's side, it's all about Iga Swiatek.
Right.
Not only is she number one in the world in general, Doug, but she's certainly by far the best player on clay courts, which of course is what the French Open is played on, that dirty red clay.
Yeah, Roland Garros, where you won, by the way, the doubles in 1989. I was doing my research. Jim
That's
Grab, I
pretty
mean,
good.
where's the trophy? It's got to be somewhere behind you there, right?
That's a good question. I got a lot of pictures behind me, but where is that trophy? That's a very good point. I think it's up. I peeked that upstairs in the living room. That's the one major I won. I got to a couple of finals, but the one I won, I got to keep that upstairs.
Yeah. It's so important you can't find it, but I understand. Okay. I saw a video of Rafa yesterday practicing at Roland Garros. Obviously, he's been battling injuries for a couple of years. Played a tune-up tournament and didn't play great. Some are saying he's going to go as far as he can. They don't think he's capable of winning number 15, and then he'll retire. Do you see that scenario happening?
I think he would only retire, Doug, if he thinks he can't do it anymore. So in other words, if he were to make a big run and win it, which I still think he's capable of doing. I mean, he's Rafael Nadal, so if he can get
Sure.
through the first couple of matches, instinct might take over. But I think he really wants to play. I don't think he's looking to, just have one more blaze of glory. He's missed so much time. He's worked extremely hard to try to come back, to get his body back to where he can compete for majors. And he's not looking to just go to Roland Garros, Doug, and win a couple of matches. He's going there with the intention of, I'm going to try to win this tournament. And I think that's what's made him great for so many years. That's his mindset. So I don't see him pull, Andy Murray, for example, who's won 3 majors. He's kind of just happy to be competing and playing and get in the tournaments. Stan Wawrinka, another guy who's won 3 majors, who's battled back from injury. Those guys, they're not going in there thinking they can win these events anymore. They just want to win a couple of rounds, and they love being out there. I don't think that's the same with Nadal. So the quick answer to the question is, I think if he does well and feels good, he's going to want to play another year or so. I mean, he wants to play week in, week out, maybe not, but he certainly wants to play in the majors. And don't forget, the Olympic Games are taking place at Roland Garros after Wimbledon, back on the red clay. And there, 2 out of 3 sets instead of best of 5. I think Rafa's also looking at that as that's somewhere he wants to go, because obviously on the red clay, if he's even close to being healthy, he's a serious threat.
And Novak, who, by the way, I didn't realize that he has been number 1 in the world longer than any other player in history. Yeah. Of course, the ratings didn't start, way back when. But nevertheless, I mean, his career is just, I don't know if he gets the credit. I know in the tennis circles he does, Pat. Maybe I'm wrong, but what this guy has done is pretty amazing, maintaining this high level. And I know he battles injuries like everybody, but to maintain the high level that he has for as long as he has, it's amazing to me, Pat.
Greatest of all time. I mean, there's no, you can't argue it anymore. I mean, you could say you liked Federer better, you like to watch him play. Everybody loved to watch Roger. Nadal's got that toughness and that, that football player type mentality. Of course, he's won 22 majors. But look, Djokovic has 24 majors. He's got a better record head-to-head against both Federer and Nadal. As I mentioned earlier, his worst surface is clay, okay, Djokovic. And he's won the French 3 times, okay, 3 times. Federer only won it once. Not to mention the fact that, Nadal, grass is his worst surface. He's actually won Wimbledon twice, but he's lost early many, many times at Wimbledon. He gets picked off there. Djokovic, not only if we look at the majors and the head-to-head, but in the Masters events, those events that are just below the majors, he's won the most of those and has the most variety of wins on different surfaces of any player. So I think you're right. He's not as beloved around the world as Federer and Nadal for a variety of reasons. His attitude, he's from an Eastern European country. He's got the little bit of a chip on his shoulder. But I've gotten to know him pretty well, over the years. I mean, couldn't be a nicer guy, a more humble guy. People in the locker room love him. He treats the other players with amazing respect. Does he go off the handle at times? Yeah, well, I know somebody who did that myself in my family over the years. He's an amazing, intense competitor. But if you talk about the respect level that the other players have for him, not just as a player but as a person, it's off the chart. So to me, he's been unbelievably healthy throughout his career. If you look at what's held him back the last couple of years, it has nothing to do with health. It has to do with not taking the vaccine. Got defaulted at the U.S. Open when he inadvertently hit a linesperson with the ball. He probably would have won it that year. The first year of the pandemic in 2020, when nobody had the vax and they had all the protocols in place and it was an empty stadium, he didn't play. Nadal didn't play, and that's the year where Dominic Thiem and Alexander Zverev played in the final. I mean, you can make an argument that if he'd been playing all these events over the years, he could have 3-4 more majors.
Yeah, he's a remarkable story. It was great to see him at the Ryder Cup last year, and he seems to be kind of a sports fan, but obviously golf. I like the guy. I've never interviewed him, but I like his personality. He speaks multiple languages. I don't know. I think he's one of the most unique athletes, not just tennis players, but athletes in the modern era. I mean, you can compare him with the GOATs in other sports. I mean, Pat, but it's tennis, and I understand that's your game. But I think he is pretty amazing all the way around.
Here's how you can understand a little bit for the American sports fan, because we're both big sports fans of all sports.
Right.
Nikola Jokic, right, who's been the MVP the last couple of years. The Nuggets just went out, but he's like a superstar in the U.S. and back in Serbia. So when someone said, "Oh, you're going to be the king," you're the man in Serbia, he just laughed. He said, "No, I'm not even close. He's not even in the discussion because it's Novak Djokovic. I mean, he's like more popular than the president of Serbia, and obviously tennis is much more popular as a sport in most European countries than it is in the United States. So Serbia, you've got, most of the sports in Europe, soccer's number 1, tennis is, 2 or 3, depending on where you are. If you're in Eastern Europe, hockey, skiing, certain places. But Serbia, I mean, in part thanks to Djokovic, what he's done, tennis is extremely popular. And Djokovic, he's like, he's a living legend. He can do no wrong over there. And I was there years ago, Doug, when I was a Davis Cup captain representing the U.S. We played in Serbia against Djokovic in Belgrade. It was a packed indoor stadium, 15,000 people. These people were pissed off at the USA, by the way. They didn't like us with the old government situation that happened in the war years ago. So it was like an intense, kind of angry crowd. And there was so much pressure on Djokovic, and I really got kind of an insight into what he deals with, because these, most places you go, people are cheering, these people were cheering, but they were angry cheers. They were like,
wow,
basically, Djokovic, you better not lose to the Americans, because if you do, You're not getting out of here. And I could feel that tension, and he could feel it. Of course, he beat us and won both his matches, but that kind of gave me an insight into his background and to what he's dealt with over. And this was before he got to number one. He was just behind Djokovic and Nadal at the time, and then of course, over the years he overtook them, and he just kind of went off on his own. So, but he's stepped back a little bit, partly because of Sinner and Alcaraz have come up, phenomenal athletes that can take it to him. So it's going to be very interesting to see the rest of this year how he performs in the majors.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I'm looking forward to the French Open. Now let's pivot a little bit because obviously last week was a big week in golf. PGA Championship. Xander Schauffele finally wins his major. And Scottie Scheffler, the world number one, gets arrested on Friday and somehow in a crazy set of circumstances makes it back, plays great. It all hits the wall on Saturday, plays his worst round of 2024. But anyway, my first question, has there ever been a tennis player that you can remember who got arrested on the day of a big match, literally walking in to the stadium?
The first thing that came to the short answer to your question is no. The
Okay.
second part of it, the first thing I thought of was my brother, believe it or not, got defaulted because he got stuck in traffic on his way to the U.S. Open. So he was driving. We had a place out in Long Island. He was driving in, got stuck in traffic. Same kind of deal that it sounds like Scheffler was dealing with. Obviously, his was a little bit different. There was no, death of a person, but he was calling. I think it was even before cell phones, but they defaulted him. He got there like a couple minutes late. It was a doubles match. He and Peter Fleming were the number one seeds in doubles, and so that's the only thing I can think of. I mean, and it's definitely for. As you did, you were doing a bunch of I was even doing news shows on this story.
Right.
And I said, as great of a golfer as Scottie Scheffler is, and he's clearly the best in the world at the moment, he's kind of boring, right? I mean, to the average fan, like people are like, this guy's got no personality. I mean, he probably has because you know him, but that's sort of the
Right.
vibe you get from him. I'm like, this is the last guy you would think that would get into trouble. So it sounds like I just heard this morning, Doug, that in the news that his lawyer that he's hired said he's got no indication that they plan on not pressing charges, because I saw a report yesterday that they were going to drop the charges. So who the heck knows what happens? But apparently this happens all the time in golf, right? When the players are coming in and their courtesy card, not that they get arrested, but they kind of work through to get into their to be able to practice before tee time. And by the way, you golfers start a lot earlier than us tennis players. Okay? The idea of getting to the site at 5 a.m. is like tennis players would be like, "Are you nuts?" Like we don't, playing at 11 a.m. is early for tennis players.
We had like an 8:40 tee time, so he was trying to get ready.
Right.
It was a bizarre set of circumstances. With that said now, Bryson DeChambeau finishes second, and in my mind, most exciting golfer in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And we only get to see him now, unless you watch Live.
Right.
I only see him 4 times a year, and I honestly miss him. I miss John Rahm. Tell me this. First off, do you ever see a scenario where a Live tennis circuit forms and maybe all the guys we just talked about go to another? I mean, is that even? I'm sure it's been talked about, right,
That's
Pat?
happening right now. They're threatening to do that as we speak. So there's all sorts of politicking going on right now, Doug, behind the scenes. In fact, the WTA, the Women's Tennis Association, just announced this morning that they're doing a deal with the PIF. That they're going to have the naming rights to the tour, which the men have already done. So it's now just a question of what's it going to look like. They're threatening to start their own tour. The majors are trying to get together with the men's tour and the women's tour, which are different entities. It's like the PGA, the USGA, and then you get, is there an international golf federation? There probably is, but it's not as big as is in tennis, right? But you've got Wimbledon, they do their own thing. US Open, Australian Open, French Open, the two tours, and what's called the ITF. They're trying to figure out how can we in the tennis world keep this under control where we can be still the governing body of professional tennis. And because to answer your question, absolutely this could happen in tennis. I mean, you don't think if I'm making up a name, Yannick Sinner or Carlos Alcaraz, and they say you can come, instead of playing in the French Open, Okay, you could play in a tournament in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East somewhere, and we'll pay you a guarantee of, I don't know, 15 million, 10 million, and you if the winner gets 50 million. Because you know how much the winner of the French Open gets? I
How
mean, it's not
much?
peanuts, but it's about 3 million, between 3
Right.
and 4 million to win a major in tennis.
It's like
Okay,
golf, right?
so at some point, that could definitely happen. And right now, the tennis authorities, that run the tour and the major, are trying to figure out how can we not let this happen. Because I think to me, it's been terrible for golf, and it would be really bad for tennis because tennis doesn't have the same television presence consistently that golf has, at least in this country. The only time that most casual fans pay attention to pro tennis is when it's a major, specifically Wimbledon or the U.S. Open.
Yeah, I mean, it has fractured the game of golf. It's bad for the game of golf. And to think that only 4 times a year we get to see all these guys, the great players, major champions, and
Yep.
they come back.
Yeah,
And
it's
DeChambeau,
Yeah,
what a
it's
show he
even
put on.
more important in tennis because in tennis it's more about the stars.
Right.
Golf really has more stars than tennis. I mean, as far as marketable stars, because there's more guys that win majors, right? And in tennis, it's like Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, and you could be number 5 in the world, and people are like, who's this guy? Like, I've never heard. You know what I mean? Like, whereas in golf, if you're 50 in the world, you can be a household name. In tennis, with the fact because the best players pretty much always win the big tournaments, right? Because it's
Right.
one-on-one. It's just that's the nature of the sport. It's different than golf. So because of that, the sort of the celebrity and the profile of individual players is even more important in tennis than it is in golf.
Fascinating stuff. It really is. Hey, before I let you go, and I appreciate you being on with us again, Yankees or Mets? I mean, I know
I'm a
you live in
Yankee.
the city.
I mean,
Yankees.
I actually grew up in Queens. I grew up in Queens.
Yes.
Close to what was then Shea Stadium, and then of course the site of the U.S. Open is right next to that. But here's why I became a Yankee fan, because most of my buddies growing up were Met fans, and we used to go to the Jet games because the Jets used to play at Shea Stadium in
Right,
Queens.
right.
But my dad got tickets 1977. I was 11 years old to the Yankees World Series game. That
Oh,
was the
wow.
game. That was the game when Reggie hit the 3 homers.
Right.
So you can imagine from that point on, I was a Yankee fan for life, and I'll never forget we were sitting in the upper deck, and when Reggie hit the 3rd homer, my dad he's like, son, this place is gonna be like we're out of here. We took off to get back to Queens, to drive back. So great memory of that. I mean, I still root for the Mets, but I'm definitely more of a Yankee guy. And so far, not bad this year. So far, pretty good.
Pretty good, pretty good, and they're going to get Cole back, and hopefully he'll be healthy. So it should be a fun summer. Hey, when I come up to New York to see my son, I'm going to call you. We're going to get together.
I'll
How
get you
about
on the tennis court. I actually started getting the golf itch a little bit more lately.
Good.
So you could help me with that, my golf swing, and I'll get you on the tennis court over at our McEnroe Academy, and we'll hit some tennis balls.
I'd love it. I don't move side to side as well as I used to, but I'd love to hit with you, Pat.
I'm on my way to see the doctor about my left knee, okay? So I'm with you, Doug. I'm with you.
Hey, listen, I appreciate it, my friend, and we'll do this again soon. And all the best to the family. Thank you.
Anytime. Same to you. Great seeing you.